A political party that has been registered in Nigeria since 2005, a party that has fielded candidates in multiple presidential elections, may not be legally qualified to present a presidential candidate in 2027. Not because they broke the law, not because INEC deregistered them, but because of something far more interesting, a structural crisis happening quietly inside the party right now, while every political analyst in Nigeria is busy watching the APC-PDP drama. And here's the question nobody is asking. If the ADC can't field a recognized presidential candidate, who exactly benefits from that vacuum? And was that the plan all along? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, the answer is going to make a lot of things click. Before we go deeper, if you are just finding Naija news feed, welcome. This channel exists to break down what's really happening in Nigerian politics without the noise, without the spin. Hit subscribe and stay with me, because this one gets interesting. So let's set the table. What exactly happened here? Femi Fani-Kayode, former aviation minister, one of Nigeria's most outspoken political voices, a man who has switched parties more times than most Nigerians change their phone, recently made a statement that should have caused a bigger stir than it did. He said that the African Democratic Congress, the ADC, may not be able to field an INEC-recognized presidential candidate ahead of the 2027 general elections. Now, Fani-Kayode doesn't just say things for no reason. The man is a calculated communicator. So when he drops a statement like this, the right question isn't what did he say, it's why is he saying it now and what does he know? Here's the background you need. The ADC has been operating as a registered political party under INEC since 2005. It's not a fringe group. It has contested presidential elections, it has state-level representation, and for a period, it was seen as one of the potential third-force alternatives to the APC-PDP duopoly. But in recent years, the ADC has been torn apart from the inside. There have been factional disputes, parallel congresses, competing national chairmen, the same story we've seen destroy other Nigerian parties from within. And the problem with factional crises in Nigerian politics is that INEC takes them very, very seriously. Why is this coming up now? Because 2027 is closer than people think. Party primaries, candidate screening, candidate substitution, all of that requires a party to have a clean, undisputed internal structure that INEC can recognize. If your party is legally contested at the top, if two factions are both claiming to be the legitimate leadership, INEC can and will refuse to recognize candidates fielded under that structure. That's the trigger. That's the crisis. And it's been building for a while. Let's talk about the rules of the game, because this is where most Nigerians get lost and where politicians deliberately keep things confusing. The key institution here is INEC, the Independent Electoral Commission. Under the Electoral Act 2022, INEC has the power and the responsibility to recognize the internal structure of political parties. It's not just about whether a party is registered, it's about whether INEC accepts the leadership of that party as legitimate. Here's how this plays out practically. When a party conducts its primaries and submits its presidential candidate to INEC, INEC doesn't just check if the candidate met the constitutional requirements. INEC also checks, was this primary conducted by the legitimate, recognized leadership of the party? If there are two factions both claiming to be the real ADC, two different national chairmen, two different national executives, INEC is in a position to say, we are not sure which structure is valid, and therefore we cannot recognize the candidate produced by either. The Nigerian Constitution under Section 221 says political parties must conduct their affairs according to their own constitution, and INEC is the referee of that process. Section 87 of the Electoral Act deals specifically with the nomination of candidates, and it ties the validity of a nomination directly to whether the party followed its own internal rules. The gray area, and this is where it gets deliberately exploited, is that INEC doesn't always have perfect transparency into what's happening inside a party. So by the time INEC realizes a party is factionalized, it may be too late for the affected party to clean up the mess before the candidate submission deadline. And that deadline in an election cycle is everything. Miss it or have your submission rejected and your party is locked out. That's the legal trap the ADC may be walking into. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. This is the part I want you to focus on. Let's ask the most important question in Nigerian politics: who benefits? First, why is Fani-Kayode the one saying this? Fani-Kayode is currently aligned with the ruling APC. He's not a disinterested observer. He's a man with access to intelligence, with deep relationships across party lines, and with a track record of making statements that, on the surface, look like analysis but are actually messaging, political signaling. So, when FFK says the ADC may not be able to field a recognized presidential candidate, you have to ask, is he warning the ADC? Or is he sending a signal to the political market, to opposition figures, to potential presidential hopefuls, to voters who were considering the ADC as a viable third force option? Because that framing, they may not be able to field a candidate, does something very specific in the political imagination. It plants doubt. It makes investors, and in Nigerian politics I mean that literally, the people who fund campaigns, it makes them hesitate before putting their money and their name behind ADC. Second, what's the ADC's actual value in 2027? Here's something the mainstream coverage is missing. The ADC's importance in 2027 is not necessarily about winning the presidency. Nobody serious is betting the ADC wins the presidency. The game is about aggregation, about whether a credible third-party candidate can peel enough votes away from Tinubu or from a strong opposition candidate to affect the outcome. In 2023, the Labour Party's Peter Obi didn't win, but he fundamentally reshaped the election. He pulled millions of votes, particularly from the southeast and among urban youth. That third-party effect changed the mathematics of the whole race. If the ADC can field a credible candidate in 2027, someone with name recognition, with a regional base, with funding, they become a variable in the equation. And in Nigerian presidential politics, variables are dangerous. They are unpredictable. They can be used and they can be weaponized. So, destabilizing the ADC before it can organize, before it can lock in a candidate and a structure, removes that variable from the table. And that benefits whoever wants a cleaner, more controlled two-horse race in 2027. Third, who are the silent players? The ADC's factional crisis didn't happen in a vacuum. Factional crises in Nigerian parties are almost never purely organic. They are usually seeded, funded, and in some cases directed by external political actors who benefit from the chaos. Think about how this works. You identify a party that has value, either as a platform for a third force candidate or as a structure that can be used for defections. You introduce a dispute about the leadership. You fund both sides of the dispute because you want the chaos, not the resolution. The chaos keeps the party weak, it keeps INEC hesitant, and it keeps anyone thinking of using that party as a vehicle constantly uncertain about whether the vehicle actually runs. This is a known playbook in Nigerian politics. We saw it with parties like the PDP splinters, with APGA's recurring internal crises, with factions within the Labour Party itself after 2023. Fourth, the regional dimension. The ADC has had particular relevance in certain southern states and in parts of the Middle Belt. If the party is effectively neutered as a presidential platform, those regional blocks of voters become unmoored. They don't have a credible alternative platform, and they may either stay home in 2027 or drift back to the major parties. That drift, that reabsorption of third-party voters is extraordinarily valuable to whichever major party can capture it. and the party best positioned to capture frustrated ADC voters will depend entirely on who the ADC's leadership eventually aligns with after the dust settles. Watch who the ADC leaders end up endorsing. That will tell you who engineered this crisis in the first place. Now, if what I just laid out surprises you, drop a comment below. I want to know your take before we get to the part that changes the whole picture. Let's zoom out, because this story is bigger than just one party's internal drama. Nigeria's democratic health depends, in a way that doesn't get enough attention, on the existence of credible alternative parties. Not just the APC and PDP trading power back and forth, but genuine platforms where new political ideas, new candidates, and new coalitions can form. The 2023 election gave Nigerians a brief, exciting glimpse of what a functional third party could do. The Labour Party moment, imperfect as it was, showed that Nigerian voters are not wedded to the old duopoly. They will move if given a credible option. But here's the structural problem. Every time a third party starts to build momentum, it either gets absorbed, key figures defect to APC or PDP for money and positions, or it gets destabilized through exactly the kind of factional crisis the ADC is experiencing now. The net result is Nigeria's political market keeps reconcentrating power in the same two parties, and that concentration has economic consequences. When political competition is weak, the incentive to deliver governance is weak. Contracts, appointments, policy decisions, they all flow through the same networks, the same patronage structures, without the pressure of a credible challenger who might actually win. For ordinary Nigerians, particularly young Nigerians who voted Labour Party in 2023 and are already disillusioned, the collapse of yet another third-party option deepens the cynicism. And deep political cynicism has a cost: low turnout, protest voting, and in the worst cases, a population that stops believing elections can change anything. That's not good for Nigeria's stability, and it's not good for any government that wants to claim democratic legitimacy. I'll keep this section brief because the international dimension here is real, but it's subtle. Western governments and multilateral institutions, the US, the EU, the Commonwealth, have all stated formally that they want to see Nigeria maintain a competitive, pluralistic democracy. After the 2023 election, which generated significant controversy over INEC's conduct and the results, there's already a level of international scrutiny on Nigeria's electoral process heading into 2027. The specific issue of party deregistration, party factional crises, and INEC's role in sorting out internal party disputes is something election observers will be watching. If there is a pattern, and if that pattern looks like a systematic neutrality of opposition and third-party platforms, that will feature in international election observer reports. It won't trigger sanctions, let's be realistic. Nigeria is too important geopolitically, the oil, the size of the economy, the security relationships, for the West to get aggressive over internal party politics. But for Nigerians in the diaspora, particularly those sending remittances home, those running businesses that depend on Nigeria's investment climate, the message is this: the political risk picture heading into 2027 is not improving. And political risk affects the naira, affects investor confidence, affects the cost of borrowing. It's all connected.
Let me still man the other side, because fair analysis demands it. The first pushback you hear is Fani-Kayode is not a credible source. He is an APC loyalist who says whatever serves his current political masters. That's a fair point. FFK's credibility is genuinely questionable. But here's where that argument falls apart. The underlying facts about the ADC's internal crisis are independently verifiable. INEC's records, court filings over the leadership dispute, and reporting from multiple political correspondents all confirm that there is a genuine structural problem in the party. Fani-Kayode may be weaponizing the information, but the information itself appears to be accurate. The second misconception: this doesn't matter because the ADC was never going to win the presidency anyway. This misunderstands how Nigerian presidential elections work. It's not just about who wins, it's about who influences the outcome. a third-party candidate who takes 8 to 10% of the vote in key swing states, particularly in the South-South or the Middle Belt, can be the difference between a Tinubu victory and an opposition win. Margins matter. Spoilers matter. The ADC's relevance is not about winning, it's about leverage. The third narrative that doesn't hold up. INEC will sort it out fairly. I want to be careful here because I'm not making a blanket accusation against INEC, but Nigeria's institutional history gives us reason to be cautious about assuming INEC will apply its rules on party structure with perfect consistency and zero political influence. INEC is made up of human beings operating in a deeply political environment. The commissioners are appointed through a political process. The idea that they operate in a pristine, influence-free zone, that doesn't hold up under historical scrutiny. So, where does this go from here? What should you be watching for? Most likely next moves. The ADC will attempt to resolve its factional dispute either through internal reconciliation, both factions agree on one leadership structure, or through the courts. Court cases over party leadership in Nigeria can drag on for years, which is precisely why starting this process early matters. If they haven't resolved it by mid-2026, the 2027 election may effectively be over for them before it begins. Watch whether any high-profile figure, a former governor, a former minister, someone with genuine national name recognition, commits publicly to running under the ADC platform. If that happens, it creates pressure for resolution. Investors follow candidates. If a credible candidate is in, money flows, and that money incentivizes a resolution of the internal crisis. Watch for these signals. If INEC issues any formal correspondence to the ADC about the status of its recognized national leadership, that's the shot across the bow. That would confirm that what Fani-Kayode said is not just political commentary, but a formal institutional concern. Also watch the courts. Any injunctions filed by either ADC faction to restrain the other from conducting primaries or submitting candidates to INEC, that's the escalation signal. Best case scenario. The ADC resolves its internal crisis, presents a clean structure to INEC by Q3 2026, and fields a credible presidential candidate who can function as a genuine third force option. This is good for Nigerian democracy. Worst-case scenario, the factional dispute drags into 2027. INEC refuses to recognize either faction's candidate. The ADC effectively sits out the presidential race, and whatever political capital was building around a third force option in 2027 evaporates. The beneficiaries will be the major parties, and the losers will be Nigerian voters who wanted a real choice in 2027. So, here's my question to you, and I genuinely want to hear this in the comments. Do you think Nigeria is ready for a credible third force in 2027, or will the system always find a way to collapse it? If this breakdown gave you clarity on what's really going on, do me a favor, share it with one person who needs to understand this. Like the video, subscribe to Nigerian Newsfeed, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay sharp.